I get my tongue Swiss cheese by a drill and shit.
And welcome to the Down in Front Podcast, the official podcast of downinfrontpodcast.com. If this is your first episode tuning in, we want to say thanks so much for joining. Thanks so much for tuning in. We thoroughly appreciate it. What we usually do here on the Down in Front Podcast is that we're reviewing movies, TV shows, video games, all a bunch of stuff while having our favorite alcoholic or regular beverages. And tonight we are going to give you a full review of Captain Marvel, the latest installment of the Marvel Cinematic Universe by director Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, starring, I was going to say Alison Brie. No, Brie Larson, Samuel Jackson, and a bunch of other people. But before we get into all that, we're going to do a bit of a roundtable. We're going to talk about what else we've been watching. We're going to talk a little bit about what we're drinking. And then we're going to give a couple of different nice shout outs after. As always, I'm going to start with the beautiful, the amazing, one of my best friends. We grew up back in Tennessee years ago, the mouth of the South, Mr. Brylan. Brylan, what's going on, man? How's it going? What else have you been watching and what you sipping on tonight?
Hey, how's it going this evening? Right now, what I'm sipping on, I actually bought beer tonight, and I was trying to find something that had a 90s theme to it, and I think I misshot it by a few years, which I think is okay, because when you get old, just the details just start blending together. So I got an IPA from Evil Genius Beer Company called Stacy's Mom.
Oh,
and so
that's a great song.
And so I thought it was a 90s song, but I was wrong. The other beer I was looking at had a female air pilot on it called Jess, but I didn't want to get that one because it was in a can. What I've been watching recently is I just finished watching a documentary series on Netflix called Losers. I really enjoyed this series. It's all about different people in sports that didn't really make it to getting the big championship or anything, but they were able to overcome their failures and still lead these amazing lives. So they actually profile people like Surya Bonali, who's a famous figure skater from France, or a French golfer that almost won the British Open, the first time a French person would win in over 100 years, but he missed it just because he took a big risk rather than playing the safe bet. I thought it was a really cool series to watch, and it's just a nice reminder, just like what we're going to talk about today. Hey, when someone knocks you down, you always want to get back up, see what you can make of it.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed that series. I've only saw like maybe 2 or 3 episodes, but I was like absolutely captivated by just how they were just talking about the fact that even though you lose, it doesn't necessarily mean that you lose anything. Even the losers are the biggest winners. I think that's like one of their taglines. So I was really digging that French figure skater episode. That was probably like a really big one for me.
Yeah, I remember that live in the Olympics, and so it was really cool to see how she took it and get more from her perspective on that situation.
Cool. Well, as always, it's great to see your face. It's great to have you on, so I'm super excited to get your thoughts, especially that one of our resident Marvel fanatics is not here, because we don't really like him that much anyway, so that's okay.
Jesse?
I taught him everything he knows.
Exactly, so this is even better. Even better. I'm going to toss it over to another one of my best friends. We sometimes sip on wine, but she doesn't really like me all the time, but we are huge Harry Potter fans. Meaghan with 3,000 E's. Arnold, how's it going? What you sipping on tonight, and what else have you been watching?
It's going great. Thanks for asking. I am sipping on Troublemaker Red Blend, which I thought was very fitting for this movie. And lately, I've been watching The Umbrella Academy on Netflix. I actually just finished it. Really enjoyed it. I kind of want everyone to watch it so I can talk to people about it. And after that ended, I started watching Schitt's Creek, which I hear is hilarious.
Cool.
Okay. I'm curious to kind of talk about that a little bit more, the Umbrella Academy, but I'm not going to talk about it just now because I'm going to toss it over to our other special guest here. But I also watched it, so we definitely need to chat about it. But as always, great to have you on. I think the last episode we had you on was the Fantastic Beasts.
Strikes the internet.
Back
to back podcast.
Ooh, fancy. Good stuff.
Mhm.
So great to see your face. I'm going to toss it to my other best friend. It's exponentially more of a best friend than Abbott and Kyle and Brylan combined. No one really likes Blewett. Meaghan's kind of separate, but she's still okay. Maddox, what's going on? Great to see your face. I know you were on a couple of fear boners since our last official podcast. I do keep up with that. It's great to have you on. How are you? What else have you been watching? And what are you currently sipping on tonight?
Hello. I am currently drinking, Exhibit A Goody Two Shoes. I promised I'd be drinking an IPA, and I am. I have also been watching the Umbrella Academy, and I didn't love it. I mean, it was there, and it stuff. But yeah, it didn't do it for me. I was annoyed watching it, and I kind of forced myself through it. So probably within the next 48 hours, I'm going to switch from being just not caring about it to absolutely hating it.
So
that's usually how I go.
Well, Maddox, as always, is great to have you on. I'm super excited to get your take talking about kind of Captain Marvel, especially I feel like you're one of the biggest comic book people I know. So I'm very excited to have you on.
Thanks.
I'm going to toss it over to the Shredder. I guess he's not my best friend, but he's all right. We deal with him, right? So we kind of have to Mike Blewett, what's going on, man? It's good to see your face. What you sipping on, and what else have you been watching?
It's great being the guy that edits these things because you have to keep on inviting me back. Hey, what's going on, guys? All y'all down in Ryan Dowd. So this week I'm sipping on my favorite brewery of this year, Down the Road Brewery. They make a combination with where is it? I think it's Dock Street Brewery. Basically, it is a golden ale with tea and honey, and it's freaking delicious. I'm gonna sleep like a baby after this thing.
Sounds awesome.
Plus, the can art is super Boston-ish centric. I don't know. I love Down the Road's can art. It's really the reason I started drinking it, and the beer's solid too, and it's a great combo. I wouldn't think that tea and beer would go well together, but it really does. As for what I've been watching, the last couple of days have been pretty busy. I did rewatch The Avengers again on my road to Endgame, and it was kind of funny seeing it immediately after Captain Marvel because of all the obvious, ties into the two movies. My big thing, though, I was pretty busy, couldn't see any sort of TV or movies, but I did accomplish one lifetime goal, and I saw Kelly Clarkson live in concert. And let me tell you this. That shit can sing. Oh my God. I was freaking out the entire, she played for 2 hours or something. She ended with Stronger and Since You've Been Gone, and that might be the happiest 6-7 minutes of my entire life.
Wait, this was a live concert?
Yes.
This was a documentary you watched?
No, I saw her at the Garden.
That's great. I didn't know that.
Oh, it was so unbelievable. It's I was giddy the entire time. Just hit after hit.
Show them the t-shirt.
It's in my car.
You bought a t-shirt?
I bought my first black concert t-shirt in a decade.
Oh,
it has in red foil lettering Kelly Clarkson of rock.
Wait, how do you know?
Because I've seen it.
Dude, that was so brutal. So I had work at 8 in the next morning, and then we went out after Kelly Clarkson till 1 in the morning. So getting home after a couple, let's say cocktails, they were beer, but let's just call them cocktails. And then just sleeping for 4 hours and then trying to work. I literally, if I hadn't seen Kelly Clarkson, I would have fallen asleep at work. I was just straight up so adrenaline rushed.
This is great. I that took me completely. I didn't realize. Sorry, that's great. So, okay, cool. Well, it's great to have you on. It's great to see your face as usual. I know you are also a super fan of Marvel. Just about everybody here is a super fan of Marvel. Let's be honest. But not to diminish your skills. But it's great to have you on. So I'm excited to get your thoughts, especially to talk about some of the music bits in this movie. My name is Warren. I will be your host this evening. I am currently sipping on some David's tea called Valerian Night. It's quite delicious. I've drank it a lot. And like Bryland, it makes me sleepy. Or was that Blewett? But whatever, what you drink it. Beer makes you sleepy. So this tea is going to make me sleepy. I watched a bunch of stuff because I was on vacation and I was probably inhaling like maybe 5 or 6 movies a day. It was heaven. It was great. I ended up watching Minding the Gap and Free Solo to see why those were supposed to be better than Mr. Rogers, Won't You Be My Neighbor? They weren't. But I also watched They Shall Not Grow Old because that was also another documentary. So I was on a big documentary kick. Really, really, really enjoyed this movie. I'm not going to get in too much detail. There is like an after credits sort of sequence in which
Peter
you
Jackson saw that.
Talks about that.
Nice.
That wasn't amazing. But the one thing I did want to kind of talk about this particular documentary, not only all the technical work that he puts into it, but there was a section that he talks about, we have all this footage and there's a lot of women that was really, really a huge part of this. And there was a lot of other things that he just couldn't tell the story that he wanted to. Like at that point, he wants to tell that story, but that's not the first story he wanted to say. So I really like the fact that he puts a good amount of time in detail of saying that, hey, I know this isn't the things that I focused on while watching and making this movie, but this stuff is here and these people still need to give a lot of credits. And so all the voices were like of old audio bits of like old interviews that was happening. So I just really enjoyed just about everything for this documentary. Like the only really bum thing I have about this actual movie was the fact that it wasn't playing anywhere. I mean, it literally took me to get to watch this. We were in a super remote place in Stinson Beach to go and watch this movie that was barely playing. Like it wasn't really anywhere in Boston or not very long. And it was kind of a bummer that it feels like it just wasn't kind of a wide release. So I really hope that either it goes to Amazon or more people has a chance to watch this, because I really think this documentary is really, really moving and touching, especially because his great grandfather was in the war. He also talks about that. So
Peter Jackson,
really good.
Big World War I lover. I mean,
huge World War I lover. Like, man, he knew his stuff. So I think that was actually really, really cool. So I'm excited about that. So that's what I've been watching. So what I'm going to do is raise our glasses and give a couple of shout outs, kind of send a sips to some of the people in our lives or other people that we currently have out there that we want to raise our glass and says, thank you for being you. I'll start with Senior Bryland, new name tonight. Bryland, who are you sending your sip to tonight?
I wanted to send my sip out to 2 ladies that are amazing writers. One that kind of just helped me drive my passion in writing. One is Flannery O'Connor. She was like one of those first authors that I just fell in love with and why I love writing today. So if you don't know who she is, she wrote a lot of Southern Gothic novels back in the 50s, but also she grew up with lupus. So she was basically house-ridden and housebound, I guess. I mean, she could not leave her house in the middle of Georgia, and she was Roman Catholic among all these Protestant people as well. So she had a lot of cards stacked against her, but was still able to become this amazing, beloved writer because of that. So a sip to Flannery O'Connor, and also want to give a sip out to Gail Simone because she's probably one of the top writers in comic books right now. She's done amazing work with Batgirl and Deadpool and many other comics. So she's also been able to define a lot of the personalities of Deadpool that we love today as well. So here's a sip to Flannery O'Connor and Gail Simone.
Thank you much. Meaghan, who you got?
I like to stick with a good theme. So I'd like to send a sip to the women of the Air Force, past, present, and future. because I feel like this movie really showed a side of things that we maybe never would have talked about. So cheers to that.
I dig that, and I also like a lot of the references that we're going to talk about a little bit later in this movie. So that was actually really cool. Maddox, what you got for me?
I think I'm going to call out Kelly Sue DeConnick. I'm not sure if that's how you say her last name, but she wrote some of the Captain Marvel comic books. She's also a really good writer in general. And she's been pretty hilarious on Twitter lately.
I think there's like a special skill that I want to get funny on Twitter. So I need to like start following her, get some tips.
Follow her and Gail Simone. Gail Simone waters people on Twitter, and it is best.
I'm about to do that right now. That's perfect. I'm a little bit nervous because he has some notes here, but Blewett, who are you sitting your sip to tonight?
I mean, isn't obvious? It's keeping
Kelly
with
Clarkson?
the theme of it's definitely Kelly Clarkson.
I wasn't sure.
Kelly Clarkson.
Come on, dude. Oh yeah, so great. It was such a woman power weekend between Captain Marvel, and then the next day was Kelly Clarkson. Oh, so great. Dude, you should have seen it. She came out and did a moment like this in like this gorgeous black gothic like ball gown, and then just like pretty much acoustically, just basically by herself singing that damn song that launched her career. Woo! It was so great. So send a sip to Kelly Clarkson.
Thank you. I'm going to send a sip to Lashana Lynch. She's actually in this movie, and she plays Maria Rambo. I believe that's pronounced her last name. Just because I wanted to see her way more in this film. I think her character was a bit of a side character that we were introduced way too much time passed since we actually saw this woman, and she actually hasn't been in too many actual movies, so I'm really excited to see hopefully this kind of like kick and jump starts her actual career. I think this will also be really cool. And also another one I wanted to mention was the younger version of Carol Danvers. I've seen her in movies before. I can't remember what her name is, but she's also great, so I will go back and look up her name.
Younger version.
I think it was only one, wasn't it?
There's two.
Oh,
so like age 6 and age 12.
Maybe the one that got into that golf cart accident. That was great. That was
not
great.
Golf cart, go-kart.
Go-kart, golf cart.
Very different.
My bad. So I am dedicating my sips to you. Thanks so much for your performance. So we have gotten to our spoiler section, and this is going to be fun. So if you have not seen Captain Marvel, what's wrong with you? Come on. Go check out the movie. Hit pause. We will be right back. A quick break for a full spoiler edition of Captain Marvel. So we'll see you soon. And we are back, and we are the Down in Front podcast. We have a couple of special guests with Meaghan and Maddox, and tonight we are giving you a full spoiler edition review of Captain Marvel. So if you haven't seen this movie, we will be spoiling it, and that's on you because you probably should check this movie out for sure. We're going to break up this movie into a couple different sections. So as usual, we're going to talk about the acting. We're going to talk about the characters. We're going to get into the story. We'll talk a bit more of how this kind of fits into the Marvel Cinematic Universe itself. And then one of the last sections we will talk about is just the empowerment of women. How that feels, how the movie kind of stands up to that, if it was good or bad, and kind of have a discussion about that. So I'm going to go ahead and toss it on over to Brylan. It says, Brylan, holla at your boy about the acting and characters of Captain Marvel.
So I'm gonna start off. Let's start off with the man herself, Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, aka Veers, Brie Larson. I think that she did a really great job with this version of Captain Marvel. It's definitely a very MCU-ish take on the character, and because Captain Marvel's comic book history is very problematic, and so it's probably better that they just stuck to like more of the modern definitions of who Captain Marvel is. And I think that Brie Larson brought a lot of maturity to this character, but also had a lot of fun at the same time. It is really cool to see her grow, but still keep her edge at the end. So that's one thing that I kind of like about Captain Marvel, is that she is like a no bullshit character, regardless of what side she's on. And I thought that there's some really cool moments in this movie that make her shine. I mean, they definitely have the montages of her having to overcome adversity, whether it's like having men just put her down with like terrible puns, or just tell her that she's gonna fail, even if it's coming from her own family members. But she's always getting back up, and that's the really cool thing about Captain Marvel. It's that she's not going to let anything back her down. And I also think that it culminates into this really cool moment where we see like Captain Marvel's powers just get unleashed, because it's not driven by something special that the Kree did for her or anything. It's a very human thing where she remembers all these moments that, even though they were tough and horrible for her, she actually gets back up every single one and keeps on going. And so that's just like a very cool character trait of Captain Marvel. No matter what the odds are, she's going to get back up and keep on fighting, which I thought was really cool.
I really like that element they kind of added to the movie, because it seems as though like we kind of saw a little bit of Captain America in the first movie, and I mean, actually throughout every Captain America movie I can think of, he always kind of kept getting up and kept fighting. It talks about kind of fighting for the little person and kind of doing things that it seems like for somebody like sort of else. And even in looking at the Into the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man will always kind of get back up. So I'm really glad that they took something that was familiar, but still put in a sense of kind of resiliency of, yeah, those guys, those men feel free to kind of get back up. There's nothing kind of holding them back, but people are literally saying women can't fly. Her, like you was talking about, her father was kind of holding her back. And then there's other stuff too, when we kind of get into Jude Law's character, and even for a moment, Annette Bening's character is kind of holding her back, but she was playing a different one. So I like the fact that in this movie, they kind of translated that, but they also put it on a bit of a twist, because in real life, women, and for a long time, has still been kind of put down, and still to this day have been. So it's nice to see something similar yet different in how it's an impact on people who actually want to go and watch and kind of gather more of a feeling for this movie.
Yeah. I also liked. I actually loved Annette Bening in here. I love her hair, like her white hair as the super intelligence, or her hair as Dr. Lawson, aka Marvel, was really cool too. I think they give her a lot of fun with those contacts that she had too, which was really neat. But I liked her just kind of demeanor, where she was kind of laid back, but she was also very nurturing of Carol and Monica for who she wanted them to be, and also what they should strive for, even if she is an alien from another planet. And I really thought that Annette Bening brought a lot to those characters that she played, especially Marvel, because we'd get some brief moments with her, but we can definitely tell that she has this really cool, strong mentorship to her, but that's also grounded in a very rational tone, which I thought was really cool. And then when she's the Supreme Intelligence, she definitely just elevates it to 11 with the kind of just demeaning of trying to make Carol think that she can't defeat an omnipotent AI, which Carol definitely shows her otherwise. But I thought that was really cool.
I guess I was bummed because majority of Annette Bening's character was evil in this movie, but she was a good person. She was on the good side of it. But from all the things that we've heard her say, her actions, she was just being being the supreme intelligence. So I'm kind of bummed about that because all the good stuff that we heard about her was like a flashback or it's kind of like an aside from, Maria Rambeau and when Carol kind of got some of her memories back. It was bummed because I really love her as an actress. She's probably the best actress in this movie. She's probably the best actor and actress performer in this movie by far, I think. But we don't really get a lot from her. So I think I was kind of bummed. No, not sure, Brylan. Not sure, blew it.
Mendelsohn turned in a great performance in this one.
I mean, if you look at her career and body of work, I would say yes.
We can argue about that later.
All right.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, so I mean, the majority of her lines, she basically played the supreme intelligence first, and almost as if she was the villain in this movie. But her character meant so much to Brie Larson, this character, Carol, especially because she was manifested as a supreme intelligence. That's the person, or that's the being that you have the closest connection to. Where when we got in this movie, we saw that, Carol's going to have probably, from what we've gotten, a closer relation with Maria Rambeau, or more so than Wendy Lawson. So I'd like to really see, I know it comes in flashbacks and I get that there's a lot of stuff that's not quite told, but at least show me in the movie why it's manifested as supreme intelligence is going to be, Wendy Lawson to Carol, and why isn't it Maria? So that was kind of a bummer for that, but I still enjoyed it.
I think because it made it seem like Lawson was the end goal, whereas Rambeau was like an equal. They were best friends. They were probably tighter, but it's made it seem that it's not what you know the best; it's what you respect the most. And I really like you as a friend, Warren, but I respect Bryland more. So like the supreme intelligence would come in looking like Bryland.
Oh,
yeah. I'm not surprised. I knew I should have known where that was going when you said it. But
I will say this: it definitely wouldn't come in looking like Meaghan.
For sure. I mean, because no one likes Meaghan.
No.
But even for your point there, Blew It. Like, if that's the case, we get information from like almost an aside from Maria's character saying, well, Dr. Lawson was the one who allowed us to actually fly. We couldn't fly because we were women, and that was back in the day we weren't allowed to fly, and so she gave us the opportunity to do that. And so I was kind of bummed that I understand how you start talking about kind of respecting and stuff like that, but I rather actually see that. I rather us, see that in action. Show me that in actual, like, not only in the script is somebody saying that about a separate character, but show me that. Show me a scene. Show me a cutscene. Show me a flashback. Like, the possibility was there. They just, I guess, didn't do it.
Yeah, and also I wanted to just talk about Lashana Lynch for a bit, just because I think she's the MVP of the movie for me. I loved her take on Maria Rambeau, her no bullshit attitude to things, and her friendship with Carol. It feels so honest and authentic that it's probably the strongest part of this movie, is that friendship they have to rekindle to kind of jog Carol's memory again. They have like a really cool moment at the end when Carol just kind of figures out like this lost past that she has, and I think that's probably one of the strongest moments of the movie. But Lashana Lynch, even when she like meets Talos for the first time, she's just like, you gotta be fucking kidding me about these aliens and shit, and she just like has this no bullshit attitude about it, and I loved her so much, and I like that she got to do even cool pilot things along with Carol that I want to see, like, whether it's Pulsar or Spectrum or Captain Marvel as well. I mean, go ahead and give her own project to work on. I just want to see her that much again.
Well, it's going to be her daughter.
That's what I'm saying. They should bring her back as her daughter. Because then you get the same actress in, like, the level of performance.
That'd be weird.
I'm fine with it.
That doesn't work.
Also, Brett...
I'm from the 90s.
You don't grow up to look exactly like your mother.
Technically, she is. Bryland, also, Mendelsohn put in the best performance of this movie.
Mendelsohn was great. I mean, I would even get a tattoo of him drinking the Coke because it looks so awesome.
Every scene he was in, and this is like I'm assuming somewhat prosthetic, somewhat CGI character. Every scene he was in, he was like super engaging. And I'm going to get into this a little bit later, but he had one of the hardest roles to play because much like Annette Bening, where she had to sometimes play a good guy, sometimes play a bad guy, he had to do the same thing, where he had to be evil and, well, seemingly evil at the start of the movie, and then
vicious,
like transition over to a more empathetic or a sympathetic type character. I'm gonna get in a little bit more into that later, but like I thought his performance was great.
I would have to agree, and honestly, I think the way that he went from the seemingly villain to this truly empathetic character happened so quickly. And for me, I'm not a big fan of like comedy movies because I think they try too hard. What I love are movies that are just funny. And I felt like he is what was so funny about this movie. I laughed out loud in the movie theater, like probably louder than everyone else in the movie theater. And for me, he was one of the huge parts about why I liked the movie.
Yeah, I really enjoyed him playing Talos/Keller. Mendelsohn? Yeah.
Mendelsohn.
I like Ben's. Yeah, Ben. There we go. I like his character in here. I think I agree with you, but he also they gave him the most amount to do in this movie. I mean, this dude was in the movie almost every other scene. So and he's playing great. Yeah, but he's also to the point where it's like, oh, I think Annette Bening is a great actress outside. Like her capability of actress is better than anybody else in this movie. But in this movie as a whole, I think it's going to have to go to either Brie Larson, Sam Jackson, or Ben. And I think it's going to be Ben's character, who's probably a little bit better because he was in a lot of sequences in this movie. And he played two different characters too. And it was kind of like up and down what was actually happening. And it's actually, he played, I think, like maybe three different characters because he was actually in as a regular police chief or whatever that it was, talking to a dead alien body. That was creepy. So I definitely agree with you, though. I do like it. I'm glad. I was getting a bit nervous because I thought it was going to be like a Rogue One character, which I felt like it was a bit short and he was kind of pretty one note. And so I was kind of getting a little bit that, but then it also kind of changed and it shifted and he had a bit more of a complex character partway through. So I was really glad that he kind of elevated his ability. He's elevated those characters and it kind of went to a different plane, especially that tearjerker moment that he's like, this dude just wants to get back to his family. Holy shit. Are you kidding me? So I thought that was actually kind of great. That was a nice reveal. And so in this movie, what he was giving, although it was kind of a bummer that he had a lot of stuff on his face, he still gave the best performance in this movie.
Jude Law, reminds me, I should try hard to get cast in one of these Marvel movies because that dude was jacked. And that, but I mean, his character is kind of obvious what type of character he was. He was going to be the false good guy that turns pretty bad at the end, and we definitely see it because I mean, anybody hanging out with Korvoth and Ronan the Accuser may not be good people, and it's interesting they're like trying to push the Kree as the good aliens versus the evil Skrulls, which comic books only good Skrull is a dead Skrull. So that was an interesting thing, is that the Skrulls are actually kind of empathetic characters in this movie.
I love that. I love that plot twist.
Yeah, it was interesting. I'll say,
because it's so. If you read the comics, at least for stuff that I've read.
Wait. Sorry, I was saying the plot twist of Jude Law being a bad guy.
Oh no!
Are you talking about?
Oh, that was super. That was super obvious.
Okay.
I was like,
okay.
I didn't hate it, but it was just like, oh yeah, and then there's the turn.
It's his eye color. His eyes. There's no good guy with yellow eyes. Come on.
Yeah, I don't think the movie. I don't think they ever expected you to think he wasn't going to be a bad guy.
Yeah.
Like literally, when I saw that, when they released the trailer that has her at the crash site, and she sees, I think she sees a Skrull shooting her scientist lady friend. I was like, that's totally gonna be Jude Law. Like, this is totally like a fake out memory, and it's gonna be Jude Law doing that. And I think they had enough other twists in the movie where they were like, we're not gonna try and trick people into thinking that Jude Law is gonna be a bad guy. So to me, that was kind of fun because it wasn't about the twist of Jude Law being a good guy turning bad. It was about his relationship with Carol Danvers and her getting to the end and being like, you know what? I don't have to listen to your bullshit anymore. Like, so to me, like that character still worked. And his eye contacts were cool. I mean, they were totally villain contacts, but they looked really cool.
Oh, I know they were great, but I was like, the first time I saw him, I was like, oh, he's a bad guy.
Yeah,
that's. I mean, me and Brylan had this joke about like we see the bad guy in one of the opening sequences of a lot of movies, and sure enough, I was like, oh, yeah, this is the bad guy. We know this.
Yeah, if there was anybody who exists who was like, I didn't see that coming, I'd be like, really?
I do say this. Jude Law's lawyer is really freaking good because you have an alien race of people, and then he just looks like a regular dude with yellow eye contacts. And it's like he did nothing to make it seem like he was an alien, which it didn't detract from the movie. So like, don't take that as a criticism at all. But I'm just saying that like Marvel has historically done a pretty good job of taking really famous people and just like putting a ton of makeup and effects all over them to make it not seem like that's their person. Except for maybe Glenn Close. I mean, they made Tilda Swinton go bald. Like, that's, you know, like, they do stuff like that. And they just basically had Jude Law in the movie.
No, Tilda Swinton was probably like, I am going bald.
You don't have to. No, look, I'm already shaving it. Okay.
We are doing this.
I would say, like, you know what? Ronan shouldn't be in this movie. When I first heard that Ronan the Accuser was coming back, I was excited. I like Lee Pace a lot. I thought we might get like some little backstory of like what caused him to become a zealot. Maybe this was like the linchpin that caused that to happen. But no, I mean, Ronan's just already evil. He just hasn't put the face paint on yet, and he just wants to bomb planets to dust because that's his job, and that's what he thinks is right because no one else is Kree. So all his 2 lines are all about let's destroy people, and that's it. And I think other than that, the other person I have just a big problem with is Samuel L. Jackson in this movie. With Nick Fury, I understand we want to find that Nick Fury that is before Avengers Initiative Nick Fury, that isn't jaded, hasn't been through the shit yet, who's just getting started with his career. I think that's a cool idea, but I think they just went too over the top with the goofiness of Nick Fury, where it felt like the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. team themselves and the whole secret government agency felt very Men in Blackish to a comedic point and just like leaned in too much of the comedy and that wasn't really taking their job seriously as we've seen them in the past do.
Can I respond to Ronan first? I mean, before we all just wreck Brown for the Nick Fury stuff?
Yeah, I would love to see it where he was just like super serious Nick Fury, and then when he sees Goose, that's the only time you see him get all bubbly and silly. That would have made me. I would have thought that would have been awesome.
So let me start on Ronan first. So for me, you know, I came into the movie thinking, all right, awesome. We get to see that trigger moment that Ronan goes off. And becomes his own separate entity. And then I left the movie, obviously not having got that, and actually liking it, because to me, the way that the movie flows, they would have had to add a couple more scenes in there to show that. And I think it would have detracted from the overall experience. So for me, I kind of liked... It's like anything else or any other kind of shared universe where you kind of have people come and go. And I really like that. He showed up in like, okay, I know this character. I kind of know some stuff, what he's about. And then he kind of disappears without too much relevance. It made the universe feel more lived in rather than, you know, Kree, bomber, whatever. The other thing, the flip side is that he was doing his job. That from his intel, from his special forces team, he said he got the only word that he got was that, all right, this is a dangerous planet with a weapon on it, and we need to go secure it. For me, that's a soldier doing their job. To me, there's no difference between that. Go talk to any U.S. Service member right now. It's like, yeah, they got to do some pretty terrible stuff, but like at the same time, that's the job that they volunteered for. And if you disagree with it, that's a whole other thing. But like, to me, that seemed like he got bad intel and he was just there to do a job and get done with it. Like maybe he was not the most sympathetic person because he didn't think about, where those projectiles were going. But at the same time, he's just jaded. He's done that to hundreds of other planets. I'm sure the first one hurt. And then after that became just, all right, hey, we're find the target, eliminate the target, on to the next one.
Yeah, I think that's you just have to read a lot into the story to get that we just get a lot of throwaway lines with him. If there was a scene where it's like a Tuesday at the office type of scene, I thought that would have been really apt and pretty cool if they showed that for Ronan. But I think they could have taken him away and then given Maria Rambeau more time. They could have given Carol Maria's relationship more time as well.
But he didn't really get any more time. Like, you could have made him an unnamed pilot and still had the exact same effect. You could have built him up in the exact same way, had the standoff at the end of the movie in the exact same way, and had him fly away. For me, it was just kind of a cool Easter egg that if someone didn't remember that was the main villain from Guardians of the Galaxy, they wouldn't, the movie wouldn't suffer because he wasn't super standout-ish in the film. At the same time, for us that know he eventually is this pretty bad villain, it's like a cool little Easter egg of like, oh, we get to see him before that whole thing happens.
I'm kind of with Brian on this one. I feel like that literally could have been anyone. Him being in the movie didn't really add anything. I would rather there have been like an extra 10 minutes to the runtime of maybe leading him up to the bad guy and them doing something like, all right, never mind, maybe we shouldn't bomb people, and him going against the orders and being like, you know what? No, I actually am going to like slaughter this entire planet to kill this one person. Because it didn't really add anything to his character. So I thought that was kind of a waste. And I didn't really get his like closing comment of like, we'll be back. And they're like, oh, for the Tesseract thing. He's like, no, for the woman. I was like, but he doesn't come back.
Yeah. We know he's not coming back.
To be fair,
she's not on Earth.
That we know of.
At the end.
She goes away for 20 years, and he takes 20 years to get to the place we see that he's going after stones.
Yeah.
It doesn't even learn to dance.
Two, like that line will make more sense. But the whole time I was just like, this wasn't doing it for me.
I kind of wanted to I kind of agree on both ends. I think a small like aside or a nod of maybe one scene, like a cutaway scene and they had it with Jude Law's character Young Rog is talking to Ronan, and I think that's the only sequence that we actually needed when he first talking to Ronan. He's talking about it, and so then he devises a plan to have Ronan send his troops to attack Earth with Jude Law like manning the actual sort of brigade at the end. And so that way Jude Law in that entire basically we needed a scene to show off her powers. We clearly need that scene and her beating up and kind of killing and destroying a bunch of stuff in space. Amazing. I think we can still have that scene. Remove Ronan because there's really no point in him being there, as you said. Put Jude Law in there, and it makes a lot more sense that end sequence because we know damn well there's no way Jude Law is going to beat her once she unlocked her powers. We know that, and so again, I liked how it ended because after she destroyed an entire fleet. There's no way there's no point to that fight, and I'm really glad they were like, yeah, no.
Warren, that was always the point, is that the sparring scene at the beginning, so here's the thing. I want to get this more into in the MCU side of things, but this movie moved in such a weird way. Like, it started off
in a way.
What? Yeah, obviously, I know. I'm left-handed.
What? Me too. I don't move in a weird way.
We're awkward. So, this movie, it started off with the sparring scene, which I thought was really cool, and I thought the themes they set up there, the payoff at the end was very nice. But basically, the point of that sparring scene was to say, you can't beat me unless you use your powers. So at the start of the movie, she was going to win that fight because she didn't have to unlock anything else after that. She was always going to win. And so there wasn't too much of a growth there to get to the where she was at the end. Like, sure, she took the little thing off, but whatever.
Yeah. All right. Well, Brylan, what else you got before we toss it on over to Meg?
I mean, I would agree with everybody else that Ben Mendelsohn was fantastic in this movie. I did like his the way he handled his character, Talos. I thought that he did have that great balance of just desperation, being violent through desperation, but also a lot of empathy, especially at the end with his family and everything. And he did a really good job, like acting through makeup, which is one of the toughest things to do, but also being just as magnetic as he is when he doesn't have the makeup on as well.
Megan, what you got?
I don't have too much to add. I have to say, I think one of my favorite lines about or from Ben is when he's Talos and he's talking to Nick Fury and he's like, "Oh, I enjoyed being your boss. I just love his blue eyes." Because I didn't know until after the movie that they were the same person.
What?
And I think I know. I'm sorry. I'm horrible at movies. But I thought that was such a good line after the fact when I found out. But he was definitely probably my favorite character, which is sad because I should have probably loved Brie Larson more than that. But one thing I really loved about her character was that we were getting to know her as she was getting to know herself, which I thought was interesting. Kind of a cool way to do an origin story. And the Nick Fury Goose friendship was pretty fun.
What I love about Goose is I never imagined or thought what would it look like if a cat was pulling a lot of G's going into the atmosphere? Or what would a cat look like in 0G? And they brought it to me, and I was like, I'm glad I saw that.
Well, they put some dogs in 0G. That was pretty funny. Huh? In real life, they put some dogs in 0G, and the look on their face is amazing.
I knew you were talking something else that was not in this movie. I was like, "What are you talking about? But why is this cat supposed to be an Easter egg, or is it
I don't know if
supposed to be
Goose
an
is in the
inside
comics.
joke?
No,
Is it
Goose
something in
is
the comics?
it's Chewy.
Goose is in there.
Yeah, in the comics, the cat is called Chewy, and it's Rocket Raccoon. That's not a cat.
Oh.
So it's funny even if you don't know the comics, but like if you read the comics, you're like, yeah, Chewy, and so then they named it Goose after another
famous co-pilot.
So.
Oh, was that from like that? So okay, I had a
Goose
feeling.
from Top Gun.
I know that from Top Gun. But when they are walking out and when Carol and Maria is walking out and they're doing the little hand, I was like, is that from Top Gun? Because this is basically a scene kind of like from Top Gun, right?
Yeah.
I want to make sure that was like intentional. Good stuff. Maddox, what you got? Any other characters in acting?
So when I initially saw the trailer, I wasn't totally sold on Brie Larson being Captain Marvel. I was like, I don't know if I like this because I only know Captain Marvel from the comics, and I actually don't really like the character in the comics. I liked her roughly a decade ago, but her character was pretty much the worst in Civil War II. So I was still upset over that story arc. But I really like the MCU Carol Danvers. I thought Brie Larson did a really good job with her character. So I'm excited for her in future movies. And I really enjoyed Samuel L. Jackson. I liked the younger Samuel L. Jackson. I thought it was funny without feeling too pushed. One of my biggest problems with Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is what's his name, Drax. I felt like they were forcing too many jokes on that character to the point where I'm like, it's not funny anymore. Because in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, it was funny because he was trying to be serious, and now he's just telling jokes all the time, and it's lame. But I really liked the younger Fury in this movie. And I usually hate the whole de-aging, like, CGI thing, but I didn't find it distracting for his character. I found it a little bit distracting for Coulson.
Oh man,
Yeah,
that was so
his
creepy.
hair was weird. And he looked like a lot of
I
makeup
thought they
on.
didn't actually digitally de-age him. I thought they just put. I think they just put some makeup on and spiked his hair and called it a day.
No, they definitely de-aged
Really?
him. Yeah. And so that I found kind of like he has sort of a flat face in general. Like he doesn't do a lot of facial expressions. So between like the de-aging and that, every time he was on scene, I wanted to enjoy his character, but I was just like, ugh, no. So I could have gone without his character being in the movie.
Yeah, I really enjoyed. I know we were all going to jump on Brylan earlier, but I really also enjoyed Fury's character a lot, especially because it was just so different. It was light, it was airy. It seems as though all the other movies was a bit more serious, and we know that like shit's happening in other movies, but he had to play a particular role that had to be more serious in those other movies. Although he didn't necessarily have to be. In this movie, it seems like, you know, they were going with a bit funny, a bit campiness, but not over the top. And they were trying to make this movie fun. And I think the insertion of his character into this movie and also the parallel between him and Carol, I think was that relationship was working. And it was just kind of like a friendship. Both are fairly new. I guess he's not. Fury wasn't new, but it was like kind of newer to him to kind of fight these aliens. It seems like that was like kind of the first time he's dealing with this, and this is the first time that Carol is like have to be like secret agent or spy. No. Oh, okay. So I was like, maybe I'm wrong. So I really enjoyed Fury's character a lot. I liked the fact that he actually had a bit of a personality. He was actually sharing information. Like we like learn more about him, and I think there was some small like funny moments when, you know, he was calling her like sort of like grunge doesn't look right on you, like put a hat on. And that's also a hilarious like inside joke from the same universe before. So I thought that was kind of funny because they talked about it a lot in Ant-Man, and they did the same thing in Captain America Winter Soldier. So the fact that they put a hat on and they're good, I think that's a hilarious joke. Please keep that going. But shut your mouth. Yeah, I really enjoyed that they just kind of had that moment just to sit down, and she was like, you know, tell me some stuff about you to make sure that you're not an alien. And he was just kind of sharing some information of, you know, what his friends call them and things like that. So I'm really glad that this is probably the most that we've ever gotten to learn about Nick Fury and Fury in all the movies. And this is, you know, maybe what, 2.5 hours. And it's crazy to think that how many movies has he been in? And this is the most we've learned about him now. Like, I think that's actually pretty cool that they also can do that, but still give us tons of character development and emotion from not only Carol Danvers, but from Talos, you know, and also from Maria. So that was a really, really kind of a high point for me to learn not only about him, but this wasn't his movie. We know this wasn't his movie, but they still put enough information so that we can say, oh, that's cool, because that makes more sense what we've seen previously in the movies that he already has been in. So I thought that was nice.
Yo, Warren. So, let's start, I guess, with Brie Larson. This is like my little character's part. So I freaking loved her stoicism. I know at first we had all these like turd basement dwellers that were just like, oh, she needs to smile more, which I love that joke was freaking in the movie.
So good.
But like, you know, when
I missed that. That was like on social media or something, or people were saying
there's
that?
like there's a bunch of dudes that were just like, oh, they're just butthurt over like a woman lead. You know, I don't even know. It's stupid, but like
I called out. Like they said she should smile more, and then on Twitter she posted a bunch of Captain America.
Yeah, with the smile.
That was
so
hilarious.
For honestly, like I loved it. She did a great job she did a better job than I thought. Again, like Maddox was saying with like the trailers, like the stoicism made sense in the movie that she is like, you know, a career military gal that, you know, it's pretty serious the entire way through. Also, one thing, I thought this was a little bit of and I feel like we're going to get into this a little later on the podcast, but I think it was somewhat brilliant that the whole battle, I guess her character arc revolves around controlling her emotions to like kind of become a better soldier. And I think that they did a brilliant take of not saying like control your emotions because like you're a woman, but like it said control your emotions because you're from Earth. And I thought that was an interesting little like tangent that they went to make it a little bit more relatable and to really draw the line between like what makes people humans versus all these like made up things that, you know, exist out in the rest of the galaxy. And I think it is somewhat of a universal language that we as people need to somehow embrace more of our emotional side. Like I know Warren has, and he's been kicking on this pretty heartily, but me and Bryland, we don't do emotions too good, you know. So I think that there was a more of a universal message there rather than. The other thing on Nick Fury, so we were asking for Ronan's like linchpin moment where he becomes, you know, Ronan the accuser rather than like just like some random accuser. We got that with Nick Fury. No, it's funny. I was actually looking it up. So there is like the accusers, and then apparently the lead one is the accuser. That's a literal Marvel Comics thing.
Yeah.
And so so I think we got that with Nick Fury, and it makes sense that this normal guy working a whatever baseline entry level government job is just some regular jackass from the 90s. And then he encounters something, and he says this in Avengers. He points out to Thor, but they had to obviously retcon this back to Captain Marvel, where he goes like, all right, we realize that because you showed up, we are so hopelessly outgunned that Earth needs to do more to put ourselves in a position. And so it makes sense that you go from Captain Marvel, where he's basically a pencil pusher, he gets exposed to insanity and then becomes like, hey, I might be the only guy that believes this, and I have to prepare the Earth for what is coming because it will come back. And so it makes sense that we get this happy-go-lucky guy, big moment, and then he hardens into a person that, you know, obviously goes crazy through the ranks of S.H.I.E.L.D.
But we don't get that hardened moment with Nick Fury in this. I mean, this Nick Fury, I wouldn't even let in the same vicinity or the same city of where a helicarrier is being built. He doesn't look like he has the responsibility or the maturity to handle that.
We don't get the hardened Nick Fury in it, but we get the start of it. We get the little push that sets him down the path of like, hey, I need to get this together. And we even see him with like the, you know,
we get him 2-finger typing on his computer to write his Great American Novel.
Right, the Protector Initiative. But that's the first draft. And so, yeah, obviously you don't go from like a pencil pusher to John Wick overnight. Right. But you get that push of like, hey, I have to get my crap on together because I'm pretty much the only one that's going to believe any of this exists.
Blew it. What else you got before we toss it over to Maddox and the transition to story?
I don't think this is necessarily acting, but it's characters. I would like to put this in. I freaking hate Superman, and I think Carol Danvers suffers from some of the same effects. Where you put in a character
too powerful.
Yeah. That you basically you have nothing else that can stand up against them, and therefore, like, nothing they do is of consequence. In fact, I think the best fight scene of this movie was when she had those things over her hands and she had to actually fight them in a realistic scenario. Pretty much every other fight scene you saw her in, she was going to win, and there was no doubt about it. And I think the movie suffered because they just couldn't scale. It was a weird thing where you don't want to bust your like big bad villain, right in the first one. Have someone who could go toe to toe with her. At the same time, like the people that they had had no hope. There was nothing. There was nothing there that they could stand up once she, even at her baseline power. Never mind when she went Broly and went powers maximum.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good call out, my friend.
I don't even think that's powers maximum for her, too, because that's one thing I had a little bit of a problem with her powers, and just representation of her powers, is that maybe this is on Marvel marketing for pushing it too hard, that we're finally going to see an Avenger that can go toe-to-toe with Thanos. And I mean, I don't really feel that by the end of this movie. I feel like she has definitely potential to help out a lot, but is she going to be the key to beating Thanos? I kind of hope not, because I think Avengers is all about the team rather than just one person figuring it out. But I felt like her powers were kind of like plot convenient. So they were like, she would utterly destroy a ship, but then when she would fight all of I want to say Yog Sarin, but that's Lovecraft stuff. But was it Yonrog's team?
Yonrog, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she would knock him over, but they would get right back up, and then she'd have to knock him over again, get right back up and knock him over again. I didn't want to vaporize them or anything, but I mean, definitely emit a power that makes them scared shitless, where they don't want to even fight her anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just the power scaling on it was awkward because they didn't truly have anyone who was like good enough. And I do, Brian, without going into this, I do hope that she somewhat gets de-escalated because, again, I want to see one of the original six have like the moment. I don't want to see Ant-Man or even Rocket or Captain Marvel figure that one out.
But the plus of her powers is I feel like we haven't seen the maximum power of Captain Marvel yet, which kind of goes back to the other Avenger that got their powers from an Infinity Stone, Scarlet Witch. We definitely haven't seen her full maximum powers because we know that she can do universe damaging stuff. Yeah. Just
so we haven't seen her without her Maximoff,
which like they do in the comics. It would be really cool if they did, but I don't think we're gonna that Scarlet Witch. But the thing about Captain Marvel, this was an origin story. So by the end of the movie, she's super overpowered, but she also hasn't come up against Thanos or any of the other big bads in the universe. And in the comics, she spends most of her time in space. And sure, she's super overpowered, but she's fighting armies of thousands, and so she can only do so much as a person. And she ends up being much more of a leader, where she has to make hard decisions. So she's almost more of a political character in the comics. Her powers are sort of there, so people don't want to fuck with her because she can nuke them. But she ends up having to make some calls that people don't like in Civil War II, where she was sort of the villain.
Or so Humans versus X-Men.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when once we're past Endgame, what they do with her character, to see where it takes her.
I also think what's interesting is throughout the whole movie, she kind of needed to figure out what side she was on. And I mean, in the end, she made a decision, but I would also be interested to see if she gets her morality in question again. If someone else throws another question of, well, why are you fighting on that side? I'd be interested to see how her character reacts to that.
Yeah. I mean, when you said the Superman thing, I was no. Because Superman is always fucking boring because he's always a fucking...
Oh, yeah. Superman's the worst. Superman's the worst.
In the Soviet Union, and they're oh, what if he landed in the Soviet Union? Other than that fucking story arc, his character is boring because he's overpowered and he always tries to, he's always a goody two-shoes.
Right.
They'll try to hurt me.
No, but that's why I refer to it. Not
isn't like that. In the comics, she will literally make the decision, maybe wiping out that planet will save a bunch of people, so we should do it.
Right. But they didn't do it in this movie. And from a power set, comparative power set, analysis, no one came close to her. That's more what I'm getting at. That there basically was no one in this movie that could stand up to her. Even at the first 10 minutes, there's just
point of the
and
movie.
Thor and Hulk are not in this movie, so
right. Well, that's gonna be the fun part, and I'm actually kind of bummed based on the post credits that she seemingly meets them in a neutral manner, because I really wanted to see them show up on a strange planet altogether, and then she has to fight Thor. That's all I wanted. I want to see that. That's and I don't think that's going to happen now.
Yeah, you never know. Happen at some point. We're going to get more Captain Marvel.
Oh, yeah.
With people in other movies. So
right. Well, if you start
yourself and wait.
Once you start throwing in the Celestials in there, if they ever do Sentry or Quasar or Nova, any of these other characters that are more appropriate to that. Like, yeah, I'm just saying in this movie, she had the Superman effect where there's nothing.
Yeah. If they ever bring She-Hulk in, like her and She-Hulk fucking
That'd be awesome.
bash all the time in the comics, and it's great.
Or Phoenix Force is coming in June. So.
Gross.
No, we're not talking about that.
Yeah. That movie's gonna.
It doesn't matter.
Rylan knew exactly what everybody was going to respond to that. So that's going to kind of complete our acting and sort of characters. I know we already started talking about the story in Marvel Cinematic Universe, so let's go ahead and expand on that a little bit. I'm going to toss it over to Maddox and says, talk to me about it.
All right. So overall, I really loved the vibe of the movie. I loved how much they leaned into the 90s. I think there's going to be so many jokes that people under the age of 25 don't get. Like the Stanley cameo, like I'm sure
oh my God.
half the people who see that are going to be like, I don't get it. Meanwhile, I was like fucking squeeing in my chair. I was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. That was like a really cool cameo, and it was sad. I was totally also bawling for a while there. But I really loved the music, and in a lot of ways, it felt more like the recent Spider-Man movies, in that it was light and funny, but still had some sort of like heavier topics and themes. So like there were a lot of like emotional impact scenes in the movie. So I liked that overall. The one thing I didn't love, which is basically my criticism of all Marvel movies, is the editing and the fight scenes. It's pretty bad. It's like there's a lot of fast edits. You don't really like know what's happening. But that can be said about basically every Marvel movie. You're not really watching them for the cool fight choreography, except for the Marvel shows that they canceled, or the Netflix shows. So other than that, we don't get the cool fight choreography. And I did not see the Skrulls storyline coming. That, which we mentioned earlier, that whole twist about them being refugees. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
So great.
Yeah, that was pretty much all I had about the story and overall stuff.
I started to Google, and then I got a bunch of stuff from Endgame, and so I almost threw my computer out of the window. So sorry, I can't help you on that. I wish I could help you for there, but yeah, I definitely kind of agree. I think I love the feeling of the movie. It made it seem like a lot of fun. It almost reminded me, I think like the other movies that I had just like a really good time with is like kind of Ant-Man and, not Thor 1 and 2 because those are trash. But, Ragnarok, you had a good time with Ragnarok, and the overall feeling, like the mood of the movie just seems a bit lighter, and it seems like you kind of want to have fun. You actually want to hang out with these people that we're watching. So I like that they kind of injected some fun in it. It was kind of like, and a lot of times it kind of did feel like a Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode, where they had a lot of this weird kind of campy comedy, but it wasn't like over the top, and it wasn't definitely kind of overdone. So it definitely means it was kind of a lot of fun. Love the Skrulls part. That was actually kind of great. I knew that they were evil, especially for me, at least from the video games and some of the comics that I read. So when they did that, they kind of did the switch. I thought, I was like, oh, but first thing in my mind was, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some people that's pissed about this, but I don't care about those people. But I think it's actually really cool to say this. We're going to tell this a bit of a new storyline, because we've seen some Kree before. We actually never seen Skrulls. So how does that necessarily kind of fare up? So I think that's actually kind of really cool. The one thing that I was kind of nervous about was, the movie itself was about 2 hours? Let me see, about 2.5 hours, I think.
It's like just over 2. 2 hours, 4 minutes, I think.
2-4? Okay.
Yeah.
And so the one thing I was a bit nervous for, and me and Emma went to go see this together, and I was nervous to go watch this movie with her because she's not a huge sci-fi fan, but she liked the movie a lot. Was it felt like they're jam-packing in a lot of information to get ready for Endgame. We don't know what's going to happen with Endgame, but it's, can you jam-pack, was it like maybe 15, 20 movies into one with these weird sort of like flashbacks. And it seems as though that they just had a big task to at least explain and kind of tell this story, but still leaving a bit of breadcrumbs around of what has happened outside of this movie, but in the universe. And I think they did a really good job with it. But if a person going in, like Emma, and didn't see all of the Marvel films, then they're going to be very confused. And so that's exactly what happened. And she wasn't even sure what was actually happening from a lot of these components, but she still enjoyed the movie as a standalone. I know me and Meaghan was talking about that. So I think that was actually a really, really positive note. That's a really good sign, is it can still be a quote unquote standalone movie, but still kind of tie back into something to do with the universe. So I thought that was actually pretty cool. And probably one of the biggest things I liked about that the story can kind of hold its own. Still have, sexism and things that are still happening today that people still deal with. That's
the way you phrased that made it seem like, the movie had sexism in it.
Sexism
I was
is
like,
bad.
whoa.
Yeah, no. But like they have these things that people and women are still predominantly women are dealing with today. And it's almost to the point where it's kind of feel like a bit of the Black Panther, where it kind of transcends. There we go. It kind of transcends to say, man, you can watch this movie in like almost any year. Like if this movie was made 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if it's possible, if this was made 5-10 years ago after this, like the overall core of this message is still going to be there. Especially when you're talking about resilient women and not backing down. So I think that was probably like a huge thing I just enjoyed about this story, that it kind of blend this line between this is a superhero movie, yeah, but it can also be a real superhero movie that people dealing with a lot of shit. So I thought that was actually pretty cool. And that's probably something that I really dug about this movie.
I definitely have to agree with you on a lot of those things. A lot of those points are my points with the story as well. Coming from seeing most of the Marvel movies, but not reading the comics, not really knowing the whole universe quite as well as all of you do. I went into the movie, I feel like I got a lot of information from it, but it could have been a standalone movie. From a universe standpoint, aside from setting her up to be a big fight against Thanos, I didn't really understand why this movie was where it was in the franchise. I feel like it could almost fit in anywhere in between any of the other movies, aside from, the very end, the credits scene where they bring it back to Infinity War. But the one thing that I really liked, which Warren, you pointed out, was it kind of went with what was going on today in society. You've got the Me Too movement, you've got the refugees, like the Skrulls. So in that aspect, it kind of hit home with what's happening right now. But in terms of the universe, and maybe you guys can speak to this more, I don't really see how it added something to the universe other than a new character who could fight Thanos. That would probably be my biggest issue with the story.
Yeah, I mean, the story is, for a character like Captain Marvel and her power set, the story and the setting was very small. And I think that was kind of a downer for it, because, I mean, it opens where we get this tease of like the Kree-Skrull War, which is an intergalactic, like multi-planet, like huge ass war that's going on and stuff. And I think they kind of like wrote themselves where they couldn't get too big with it, because they wanted to show this whole refugee part with the Skrulls as well, that no, it's not a whole war going on, it's more of a genocide that's happening. That it kind of knocks down like how powerful Captain Marvel is, because she really doesn't have something like huge to fight. She's got a couple ships at the end, and that's it. And like no one is going to be competition for her. If they were able to like kind of tie in, like instead of there being just 3 ships of the accusers, what if it was 300 and show that? That would have been fucking amazing to see her rip through hundreds of ships rather than just one. And I think that would have been really neat to see. And it's like, okay, we've seen Thor like stand there with hundreds of people in front of him, and he actually just annihilates them like they're nothing and yells, "Bring me Thanos." Let Captain Marvel do the same thing. So show me her mightiness because of that.
Thor for a while. Like, we had to go through 2 terrible Thor movies, 1 good Thor movie, and a bunch of Avengers movies to get that. So, like, Marvel is all about building up characters and building to a moment. And so I think it, like, had she blown up 1,000 ships at the end of this movie, I'd have been like, all right, what's she going to do in the next one? So I like that they didn't, like, totally blow her out of the water yet. And I really think that, like, after Endgame, like, the next Marvel movies, there's going to be a lot more space stuff in it. Like, I think the Shi'ar show up, and there's going to be some other, like, cool beings that happen, and Captain Marvel is going to be a lot more of a political peacemaker. So I like the toned down powers.
Well, even in the first Thor, I mean, on Jotunheim, Thor is still ripping through ice giants like it's nothing. He's laughing while he's doing it.
Yeah, but that movie, Thor's powers were earned from like an audience perspective rather than like, he didn't scale up a ton from where he currently was. It's just the audience hated him in the first couple of showings. And, you know, and then so when he yells, "Bring me Thanos," we're like, finally, this guy's cool. You know, like that's it. But he, like, realistically, like, I mean, it took him losing his hammer to unlock marginally more power that we've seen. You know, he's just like, dude, you're the god of thunder, not the god of hammers. He's like, oh yeah, I guess I am.
Yeah. And I still think like someone like Doc Strange could actually get the better of someone like Thor on a good day.
Yeah, who was saying that earlier, that Captain Marvel's like the only
was that, Maddox?
Thor's pretty. He wasn't that smart. So.
Sure.
Yeah, but you can throw a mean axe. And this is an aside, but I forget who said it earlier that they were saying Captain Marvel would be the first one to stand up to Thanos. Technically, we have 2. Like, Doctor Strange did it. And then what's his face? Thor did it. So it's like,
what's his face?
Yeah, the guy we've just been talking about. So it's not like,
but again, he's not that smart because he didn't go for the head like that.
Right. Well, to be fair, he
wouldn't be in this mess.
I don't think he knew the whole of it, but yeah. All right, hang on.
And I think for me, what I was getting at is why couldn't we have had this movie earlier in the franchise? Like, what if we had this movie before Infinity War, and then the pager scene at the end where, you know, Nick Fury is paging someone, then you're like, oh shit, it's Captain Marvel, she's coming back. Like, I feel like this was, oh crap, we need to bring her into the universe. We better do it now before Endgame.
Yeah, I agree with that.
To be fair, I liked that because, like, again, it was an Easter egg of, like, you know, the common person had no idea.
I don't think that word means what you think that word means.
That was an Easter egg. My mom didn't know who that was.
Like, the plot's an Easter egg.
Everybody looks up like, no. Good try.
We're a bunch of April chickens right now. Just laying Easter eggs all over the place.
Yep. Okay. Anyways, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Meaghan. I think this movie could have, I think just probably because of time, and they wasn't sure when they initially kind of plotted out, they didn't quite understand or know where this was going. So they had to put it in somewhere. But I think this movie could have easily been done before. Why is it this year? It should have been last year. I think that would have been pretty cool if it was last year, but
it was supposed to be. It got bumped. It got bumped for Spider-Man.
Oh, really?
Oh, was it that or Black Panther? I think it was Captain Marvel. I think Captain Marvel was supposed to come out earlier. Black Panther was still the lead-in to Infinity War, and then they got Spider-Man back, and then they bumped Captain Marvel.
Yeah, but I feel like this movie should have come like last fall.
Like, it just seems too rushed because now we have 1 month and it's Endgame.
They got cute about it where they're like,
why are
we're
we
going to
here?
release it on internet. It should have been in November. There was no movie in November. Like, they should have just done it like they did with Doctor Strange and Thor Ragnarok and just had it 6 months before the May movie. Yeah, no doubt. I think we were talking about runtime. To me, it felt like they wasted a lot of scenes on stuff that was inconsequential and they could have touched on in, subsequent movies. Like, let's be honest, this movie has made $500 million already, and it's day 5, I think. Like, they're going to make more Captain Marvel movies. 100%. Like, that's a lock. Yeah. With this, they had a lot of weird scenes where they referenced like the brother and the father, and then they never really came back to it. And I don't need things spelled out for me, and I get it. It kind of like it's hinted at that maybe they didn't really, those male characters didn't believe in Carol Danvers, and so like you can kind of like use that to build through. But when you have a lot of unnecessary screen time going to characters that are never named nor spoken about in the present timeline, you can kind of drop those and come back later to them, I felt
that's why they put them in a montage.
Right. I felt like they had they had a really solid 75% of the way there movie. Like, for me, that scene where she stopped the orbital bombardment was like the easiest thing I've ever seen. She stopped one missile and was like, oh, sick, I'm just going to throw it at all the other ones. Like, there was no urgency to that scene at all. I think that the way they developed her throughout that was awesome. And then she should have flown away, and then we should have seen where she ended up. And had one big fight to give the Skrulls their new starting point. She has to go take on a Kree contingent, beat the hell out of them. That's the big final battle scene. Her and Talos shake hands, and Talos is like, all right, thank you. We're going to start rebuilding our civilization here. That should have been the end of the movie. You would have had the big epic battle scene that I think a couple of us are clamoring for. It felt like they wrote a 2-hour movie and then they filled it. And then they're like, I guess we can't write any more. Another thing on the flip side of this movie is that what the hell happened with the pacing there? They basically started off, and then the Supreme Intelligence was like, well, you're not good enough. And then 4 seconds later, she's like, you're good enough. You're on your first mission. And then that mission fails. To me, I liked the other characters, the other Yon-Rogg, was a Team Star Force. I thought they were kind of interesting. I would have loved to have seen them develop that more. I would have loved to have seen them go on a couple missions and then like be successful, because that would have made the failed mission that much more powerful, right? Like, you've seen them work together as a team for 30, 45 minutes and then have that failure and the rest of the movie starts. I don't know. The pacing was all sorts of off in this.
Well, I think this is the first time that she sees the Supreme Intelligence in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I thought this pacing kind of made a bit more. I think that pacing made more sense because there was never a time in which she said that she failed or she wasn't good enough. It just says that Yon-Rogg was saying that she needs to control her emotions, and that the one thing you have to remember is that those powers can be taken away or whatever. Like, we gave you these powers. But I think when I at least like the pacing, because once she's introduced to a small kind of sliver into her past, which was the Supreme Intelligence, that kind of kicks off something that, hey, who is this person to me? Like, why does this kind of make sense? Let's go on this mission. But now this kind of plants a bit of a seed of, I kind of need to start figuring this out of why does this person appear in front of me? Then the capture, then the whole mind stuff, then it goes into her memories, and that kind of kicks her off for there. And so I kind of like where that was kind of going with the actual pace. I really didn't see an issue with that, but
I want to see them work as a team together more. So then
the Space Force?
Yeah, Star Force. So like when she has
Gingu?
Yep. When she eventually has to turn against them and then fight them, it would have hit harder. There was like she had no connection to any of those characters,
Yeah.
Well,
aside from the rest, they were just
even the line she was like, I never something about liking me. She's like, no, I never liked you. I always hated you. I'm like, okay, that would have been a more impactful line if they actually battled together a lot.
Right. The best movies or the best villains are often, well, besides the Joker, are often the folks that like have an intimate connection with your protagonist. And so because you could really feel the connection between the two. Oh yeah, you look any of these things, the people that play off each other the most.
I've already seen that so many times. Like,
well, what we got in that last scene was Captain Marvel beating up a bunch of people that she had no feeling for. And so us as the audience, like,
that's not true. She didn't have a feeling towards them. She literally always felt like an outsider, and she knew she didn't fit in. Like, I like that about the movie. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, she was always made it seem like they casted her out. She was the outsider.
Yeah.
She never.
But she made it seem we didn't see like on the mission her getting betrayed or anything, getting left behind. I would have loved to have seen more Star Force.
No. I like the way they played it. Like, we've already done the whole, like, oh, you were my bestie and now you've betrayed me. Like, these were literally like the fucking mean girls in high school who met her in the club. And at the end, she was like, you know what? Fuck you guys. I
wish they showed that then. Yeah, they didn't have to be besties, but I wish that those characters were at least lived in with. Like, we didn't get any screen time from any of the other characters besides Yanrog.
Yeah,
and a little bit of Minerva.
But
we know what happened before.
Even mentioned it though. These characters didn't matter. Those characters don't matter. I don't think we need any more information.
They didn't matter because the movie didn't make it seem like they mattered. I think they're still cool.
I don't think they needed to matter. I think the biggest fight she had was with Jude Law, and that was like her person. He was her person. He was the guy who was like helping her train and yada yada yada. His blood was in her, whatever the fuck that was. And I feel like she had to go against him. And she didn't need to have that kind of relationship with the rest of the team. We got that payoff when she fought him, I think.
Yeah, but that fight was 4 seconds long. She hit him with a photon blast, and then that was the end of the fight.
Yeah, but it was still a good fight, and it was a good wrap up and call back to the beginning.
And it was like a growing moment for her, and
I don't know.
Did that first fight seem like a Matrix fight between Neo and Morpheus to anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like mentor-student, like sparring.
I know we've seen it a lot, Brylan. I'm just saying that it made it seem like Neo and Morpheus to me. It's like,
I also kind of like the whole, like, how he mentions that his blood was like running in her veins, because I immediately thought of Adam and Eve. And that was basically like Eve being like, you know what? Don't care.
I feel like she should have cared. She, doomed all of humanity for damnation.
Meaghan, did you say sucks to suck?
Yeah.
So great. Okay, what else do we have for story in the cinematic universe before we start talking about the empowerment of women of this film?
I got some things. I do agree with Blewett. There is a lot of weird editing in this movie. There's even one scene where Carol's fighting Yogg-Saron in the hangar bay, and then all of a sudden it cuts to where Yogg-Saron is blocking Talos and his family from getting on the Quinjet. And I was like, all right, he just jumped literally from one end of that ship to the other in a split second. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? But there's actually some really cool things about the like effects and CG in this movie. So I love like the de-aging stuff. I love their costumes and the helmets when they go on and everything. That first scene when we do see Star Force, it looks like a space version of a SEAL team coming out of an ocean. It's really sick. And also, like, they did a lot of cool practical effects, like the scrolls shape shifting is really cool when they morph. That CG is cool, but like when we see one of the scrolls take the same body as Talos and says, "Hey, pick someone else," it's those were actually twins. So I actually appreciate like when they cast twins to do things like that. I think it's really cool. Another cool effect scene I like is I love like how touching it is when Carol has her niece like try to pick her colors of her costume, and we see like all those old Captain Marvel colors, and then she just says, "Hey, we're going to be on the same team," and looks at her shirt and just like, "All right, go ahead and choose that one." So I thought that was very touching and cool. But yeah, like the beginning of this movie, I was probably crying for a half hour just because that opening credit scene with all Stan's cameos, so good, and just still emotional whenever I see anything about Stan. And yeah, I'm right there with you, Maddox. The Mallrats callback is probably like the best 90s reference they had, and it's just so touching as well. But also there's a lot of the 90s stuff I appreciate. I like watching them wait for the CD to load up on Windows 95, but there's some 90s stuff that kind of felt really forced too. I like that we do see Carol wear Nine Inch Nails shirts and Nirvana shirts and wear a flannel shirt around her waist and stuff. But does Nick Fury really have to point it out and say, grunge is a good look on you? I was like, that's a very forced, cheesy line. I didn't like that at all. And I mean, I thought they just kind of like were cramming it down your throat that, hey, we're in the 90s now. And I mean, seeing Blockbuster was cool, but also, do we really need the Tesseract being carried around in a Mr. T lunchbox? Or do we need to see like, hey, here's a pinball machine. Remember pinball machines? They were a thing. It just got a little too ham-fisted when it came to the 90s references over time. And I was like, let the characters kind of just portray themselves and kind of bring a 90s attitude to it. I think that would have worked a lot better. And then also when it comes to the music cues feel forced. So the music I love. I mean, I grew up in the 90s, so these are my jams. I think they stole my CDs, for instance. But I felt like it was just kind of very forced. Like, I mean, when they're driving in the desert, I mean, what's the first song you think of? Is it TLC's Waterfalls? I don't think so. Or like just having Just a Girl play while she starts fighting after getting her powers going.
Nope.
That was awesome. That was freaking awesome. Oh, that was so great. Are you kidding me?
The cueing of it is forced. It feels just very heavy-handed to that. But I mean,
you were a girl in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, and it was like, hey, I mean, it's like, maybe I want something that's a little bit more like someone from the 90s would get, like, where's the Slater Kinney?
You want like Static X Push It playing? Like, come on.
Static X Push It.
So good, though.
No, I'm Just a Girl was like the perfect upbeat, like chick rock song.
But there's better No Doubt songs. I mean, there's better Hole songs. They didn't have to play Celebrity Skin. I mean, that came out in 98, so it doesn't even like take place during this movie. So that song's not even out during this movie.
That wasn't, I thought Kurt Cobain wrote that song. I thought that was like early to mid 90s.
No, it's 98.
Really? I also thought that was way earlier. Interesting.
Hey, I thought Stacey's mom was in the 90s, so it makes me wonder, what did I do in 2003?
Listen to Stacey's mom on repeat.
Just watch the music video like over and over, like everybody else.
Yeah, I think Meaghan did that.
Yeah, but I would say like there was this amazing sci-fi like score that was in the trailers that I loved. And we get none of that because they did push a lot of these 90s songs. And I think you could have had the 90s songs here. Maybe if like one of the Kree hit the jukebox and then Just a Girl was playing, I would have been like, all right, that's cool. You actually kind of built it into the environment. But just like saying, all right, we're going to play a 90s song right now because it's the 90s. That's just like rubbed me the wrong way. I felt that either blended into the environment why that's playing, but don't just say, hey, let's just drop a 90s song in here, because they actually had a really cool score that was in the trailers that I was hoping to hear more of, and we really don't get more of it, which I found was kind of disappointing. But my biggest disappointment of this movie is they fully fucking retconned part of Nick Fury's story that we already went over in the MCU from Winter Soldier. Like, we get the story in Winter Soldier that he lost his eye while on a mission with Robert Redford's character, and that it is a turning point. It is something that makes him hard-edged and everything. It is a traumatic experience in his life. And now they're going to, for the first time, blatantly retcon an important part of an MCU character, that his loss of his eye is from a cat scratch as a joke and doesn't really impact his character one way or another, except like, oh, well, I lost an eye. Might as well pick a new one out, or maybe I'll wear an eye patch. Who knows? So I felt that was just who let that pass on the script, and why did they ever do that? Plus, it also makes it make no sense that Ben Mendelsohn takes the shape of Ben Mendelsohn when he's playing as a human, when that person should be a young Robert Redford.
I agree with you. I thought that was one of the biggest missed opportunities of this movie.
I was like, this is the biggest, most blatant rewrite of MCU story that we've gotten so far in any of their movies, and they just said, fuck the past, let's just make some bullshit up and play it as a laugh, and it doesn't work. It's fucking terrible.
I literally couldn't care less if they changed.
I mean, maybe I care that much about it, but it just stuck out like a sore thumb that they took like that part of Nick Fury's life, and then it's like, all right, let's play it as a comedic effect and not really care about what we built up. Like, they didn't really give a shit about their continuity, when this is a whole series of movies that painstakingly care about their continuity movie to movie to movie.
I mean, it's an eyeball. I don't even remember that line from, was it Civil War? I'm guessing that was. Yeah.
But does he mention in Civil War exactly how he lost it when he was confronting the Robert Redford character?
It's Winter Soldier.
Don't even remember.
Yeah, because he's not confronting Robert Redford in that. He's talking to Steve while they're going down to look at the SHIELD helicarriers. And he also has the same story about how his dad used to walk down the street with his lunch bag and a sandwich, but also a 45 in his bag too, even though it was his own neighborhood. And it was a whole story that led up to who can you trust? And the whole parable of it is trust yourself first over anyone.
Well, so two things on that. First of all, I think that he was trying to teach a lesson. And so the master spy who's got secrets about his secrets might have just been lying about all that crap. You know, like that. I'll leave that open. I'm not as angry about Goose scratching him. Honestly, I thought it was kind of a funny gag. They didn't hide it particularly well. I think everyone who saw the first frickin' trailer is like, oh, that's how Nick Fury loses his eye. But,
oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Well, they didn't know. They didn't show any of the end.
I don't remember it being in the trailer.
It's not, but he's like he scratches the cat, and you're like, oh, cats have claws. That's probably how it's gonna.
I think they leaked that rumor because I felt like throughout the movie they were like teasing it. I think at one point they even say like something along the lines of "Don't hold the cat up to your face" or something.
Yeah,
and
it's
every single time he has the cat in front of him, I was just like, "Oh my god, it's gonna happen now."
Yeah.
So I thought it was fun.
That being said, Brian, I do agree with you that you have a shape-shifting character. You could have even had like a weird inside joke and had like the Sting been on in the background, and then Talos transforms into a young Robert Redford to go like talk to. You could have something stupid, but just
I would have loved that. I mean, give me that young Robert Redford, because that's who's supposed to be there at that time.
They're right. I think it was an easy opportunity to kind of connect those two movies, and they somehow missed it. Like, I don't know. I guess Robert Redford's retired from acting, but like they put freaking Carrie Fisher in Rogue One.
He may have not okayed them using his.
Yeah, maybe. So Mendelsohn was just like, fine, I'll do it myself.
I'm looking like Robert Redford.
Oh no? Okay, I can just be myself.
But other than that, I mean, I love the mid-credits scene. Like, it was good to see Chris Evans' beard one last time. And the final credits scene is amazing because that CG work, I mean, I've seen that happen with cats plenty of times, so that's just really on point.
Everyone who's like a cat owner was just like, oh my god, yeah, I know that sound. I know that. They're not going to throw up. Oh no, they're totally going to throw up. Like it was good.
Honestly, I kind of wished it was a hairball and not actually like the whole lead up and then it's nothing.
Like the homecoming post-credit scene. Best soldier's key, patience.
I think the one thing I forgot to bring up earlier was I'm curious about how Monica shows up later. Like if she's going to be Photon or Pulse. Because this is in the 90s, so I'm wondering if she's going to show up in Endgame. Because she'll be in her 30s. I can't do math. But like she'll clearly be an adult. And they're very clearly going to make her Photon or Pulsar, like whatever they're going to call. I don't even remember what her current character is.
Starbeam. Is that one of them?
Maybe they should have like done like a cool 90s reference, like maybe Monica has a black onesie swimsuit that has a yellow stripe on it and said, "Hey, you're a hero, wear this." And like Carol says, "Why would I wear that bullshit?"
Well, I like that she was wearing like the Captain Marvel colors though, since she was like Captain Marvel. So that was kind of cool.
She did the Shazam colors too in there.
Yeah,
that was kind of cool.
I thought that was really good.
She did do the black and yellow too, which I thought was.
So I'm really curious about where her character ends up when she shows up and who she is.
Well, Fury made the hint too. That was like she's like, "Oh, why can't I go?" or something to that effect. And he's like, "Well, you're gonna have to glow like her." It's like, gotcha.
Like how she
yeah, that's.
I don't get it. Does she become special?
Yeah.
She gets powers.
Yeah, she's been like like secondary.
Spoiler.
So that's an Easter egg.
That was an Easter egg.
That's where I was going with that.
I don't see it as I think that's foreshadowing.
Her little thing on her arm was definitely a Deus Ex Machina because that thing does way too much in this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if like. Come on! Not only does it change your
current
color
technology,
of your
it's alien. You can't explain it.
Oh, okay, cool. So it can hack into a payphone. Wait, hold on. How do you know how to operate a payphone? Those things are definitely not on that Kree planet. What's going on?
With that, but when like Monica is able to like change whatever color she wants, I was like, how does the Earth teenage kid be like, "Oh yeah, sure, let me just twirl my finger around"?
Yeah, I know how to figure it out.
Change the colors to exactly what I want.
To be fair, I did that all the time on character selection screens in Neopets, so I don't see
That's fair. Wow. That's fair. I mean, that is true. Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. I do like the other 90 reference of like the Blockbuster and Radio Shack. I'm like, that was kind of funny.
I mean, to be fair, most people seeing this movie don't know how to use a payphone.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're also terrible and filled with germs. So that's fair. That's
so many germs.
Gotta look
so many germs. Well, Brylan, Blue, what else you guys got for the story in the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I have one last point on that. I love that everything was like all three sides were so gray. Where you kind of start off with Star Force being like the big heroes. And to me, I kind of likened it to like the American Revolution, where you basically had like the scrappy upstarts and the Skrulls, and that they had to do like some pretty atrocious stuff to kind of free themselves from like this overarching empire. And I like it when there's not like, I mean, it was pointed that the Skrulls were the good guys and then the Kree ultimately were the bad guys. When in reality, the Kree were just kind of trying to maintain order over a broad civilization, which is inherently hard to do. And
to go off of what you were saying, Blewett, I feel like it kind of ties back to every man is a hero of his own story. And so it gives you a good background of that. Like each character, you kind of see why they're coming from where they're coming from, which at the end of the day, I think just makes for a better story and a better movie.
Right. Yeah. There wasn't a super clear, like where the good guys were the bad guys.
So we got a lot of acting, we got a lot of character, we got a lot of story, we have a lot of Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I definitely wanted to kind of ask this question as a whole. So definitely looking at the empowerment of women in this film, I think looking at, and not that I think, that's really the only kind of Marvel woman superhero that we've actually have her own movie in all these other movies that we currently have already seen. And so that's a pretty big deal. I know the release date was on International Women's Day, which is also a pretty big deal, and so I definitely wanted to kind of talk about this especially this particular this movie. How does it feel? Like, does it feel empowering? Why do you? How does it release on International Women's Day? Was there any sort of impact for there, and kind of what's your overall kind of feelings for there for that question? So I'm going to start with Maddox. What you got?
All right. So I think for me, like the most impactful part of the movie was towards the end when it has the montage where she gets knocked down. I think when she's talking to the Supreme Being or whatever, and it has like her as a kid getting knocked down, like her and like the military getting knocked down, and just like in every single scene she gets up, and then she gets up at the end. I was like crying in the movie. Like that was such a good scene that I really enjoyed. And I think earlier I mentioned one of the writers for Captain Marvel, Kelly Sue DeCornick. She made a post earlier because there was a lot of backlash against the movie. And in an interview, she said that Carol always like falls down, and so does Captain America. But when Captain America gets up, he gets up because it's the right thing to do, you know. And I think we see that in the movie. Like there's all this sort of like, you know, righteousness to his character, and he's kind of a goody two shoes. And then she says, Captain Marvel gets back up because fuck you. And that is like very much her character in the comics. And I think it came through in this movie as well. Sure, she's doing it because it's the right thing, but she's also doing it because she just won't be shoved around. And so I really love that about her character. There's like a toughness to it. When she gets up, or when she blasts the guy at the end, she's like, I don't have anything to prove to you. So I really enjoy that about her character. And I think it's also really important that there's no love interest for her in this movie, which I mentioned earlier. Like that is a big deal. They don't hint at it. They don't float around in it. In any of the flashback scenes, she doesn't have a love interest. It actually occurred to me at the beginning of this podcast, but her best friend also doesn't have a love interest. Her best friend is a single mom.
Of a daughter.
It was a daughter. Yeah. So you have like three, like, and between like the scientist woman, you have three women who are leads in this movies. None of them mention dating, husbands, boyfriends, partners. Like, it's just not brought up. And that's fucking awesome. Like, it's a big deal that we haven't gotten in any other like superhero movie, really. Like even like the male superhero movies, they all have love interest. But yeah, that was pretty much all of my stuff.
Gotcha. Meaghan, what you got?
All of that. As I said in the video teaser trailer, I feel like this movie did everything that I wanted Wonder Woman to do. I walked out of it like it didn't feel cheapened by a love interest, and all of the main characters, like you were saying, were female. You've got like a captain on the Air Force. You've got the two women on the Air Force. You've got a daughter. So many of the people in the movie were strong female leads who had nothing else going on except being fucking awesome. And I think just still talking about the standing up scene gives me chills. And it's one of those where they kept saying, you know, you're being too emotional. You can't, you know, overpower this if you're constantly focusing on your emotions. And I feel like in that last scene, she did this really beautiful thing where you could kind of just see all of the rage flowing through her. And she takes that emotion and uses it against Jude Law. And it kind of goes to show like you can take that emotion and you can use it and you can be really powerful. And I like that they kind of took exactly what he said and flipped it on its head. So many things that they did throughout it kind of did that same thing. And all I can say is it was great.
Yeah.
And I feel like in every instance throughout the movie, they just took that empowerment and, you know, maybe it felt heavy-handed, right? Being on International Women's Day, that everything was so like, oh, you're a woman, you can't do it. But at the end of the day, I think that's what made it more powerful. Is they're like, you know what? I'm not going to back down. I'm going to make that the key to this movie, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree with you more on all these points, and kind of going off of both what you said, Meaghan and Maddox. And Maddox, you kind of brought this up, and I was like curious, and I was like looking back at these women, these characters, but not really, right? These women that are being portrayed in this movie, they're all pilots. But then if we take a step further, right, you have a single mother, which really have really one mother character in this movie. We don't know who Carol Danvers' mother is. All we know is her weird backstory is her terrible fucking father and brother. I don't know if her brother was terrible, but it seems like he would be terrible. So whatever. But so we have those three characters, right? We have a single mother, we have a superhero, and we have a doctor. Now all of them are actually kind of pilots too. And so this movie is absolutely bursting with positive female characters to the point where they even give you a size and references to Amelia Earhart. And it happens so quick, but it's like, oh my gosh, like this is great to the point where we have flashbacks and you just see them having a good time, just hanging out in like the bar and like having karaoke. And it has like really nothing to do with any of the any of the men in the toxic masculinity that we've seen in literally all the other films that we in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So it really blew me away, and I was really kind of excited to talk about this also with kind of Emma, because I was sitting there like, did this like empower you? And I literally asked her that as I'm like trying to drive in, because it empowered me, and obviously I'm not a woman and I don't identify as a woman, and so I thought that was kind of great. And then I started thinking even more. I'm like, damn, I'm really upset about Wrinkle in Time and Wonder Woman. Like, why couldn't y'all do this? Mm-hmm. Like, this is really upsetting, because
Wrinkle in Time could have done so much. So Meaghan, many strong female characters.
Meaghan, I wish you were there for that recording, because holy shit. Did you read the book? I didn't. The book no, but Brylan, I think Blewett did.
Yeah.
And I read it. Just so sad. But I think, as I look and I watch a lot of these movies, a lot of these films, especially these huge $billion making films, I think of like my nieces and nephews and my daughters, and I always look at them. They're like a lot of them older, but some of them are like teenagers, like 15, 16, like you definitely kind of getting older. And like, I really kind of talked to them. I was like, hey, I know you saw this movie though. What did you think about it? And I asked her after Wonder Woman, I asked her about Wrinkle in Time. And so I'm really curious to kind of ask her about this movie and this film and how this resonates with her, because we've seen the little guy. And again, all these things that we've talking about, we've seen this happen so many times. It's just refreshing to see it here. And kind of going off of what you were saying before, Meaghan, although I really wish that this movie came out last year, I'm kind of glad it came out this year as the first Marvel film, because this is kind of like that launching point to say this is what movies can be. Like we saw that at Black Panther, where we have positive African American like figures in that movie, and that was rare. Like we didn't really see it. What Blade, which is come on, so. We now have this particular kind of movement, I feel like, which is super positive and super impactful. And we starting off this 2019 year with a president who doesn't really give a shit about women, I feel like. And so I really like the fact that I understand that they had to delay it, but I'm glad they put it in 2019, because we don't have to worry about 2018 that was really filled with Infinity War and all the other like duels and sequels. Now, I know that Endgame's going to come, and I know there's another movie probably later on this year. I know that other movies are going to come, and I get that in this same year, but at least where this movie and where this year started, I think that's where it can be impactful. If you can kind of do this first, fairly within the first 90 days of them, within the first 90 days of the actual year, I think that's what makes it. I'm glad it does kind of feel empowering for women, and that I'm glad that people are liking it. That's why I was surprised that I knew that people are going to be backlash. I knew that people are going to be upset. Those dudes, whatever. But I love the movie, and I'm really glad that it has like those characters that you can kind of stand behind and said, yeah, these are humans. Like these characters aren't just things that people have wrote down in paper. Like they have manifested into what people can be and things that they can achieve. So I'm really, really excited about that, especially coming from like a single parent family, single mom family. So I'm like, I was all over that. I was like, yeah, this is amazing. So I think that was actually great.
One of my favorite lines within that was when they were talking about the location of the lab, and they're like, oh, I had my scientist on this, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, it's an orbit. It's basic physics. And I thought that was fantastic because you're not just like strong women with no love interest, but you've got like the STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, math, and you've got these young girls, the daughter who's like so interested in this. And yeah, she better become a physicist in like the next movie because that's going to be fucking awesome.
I just had a thought. I really wish the daughter would have actually figured out the coordinate before the scientist. Yeah. Like, oh, that's so good. That would have been great. That's okay. Okay, I'm done with my rant. Brylan, what you got?
I would say, like, does this movie feel like it's empowering for women? I would say the answer is yes. I would say there's a lot of cool scenes in here, especially that speak to just female friendship. I mean, the relationship that grows with Monica and Carol through this movie is fantastic. And I would say for the superhero more part of it, I mean, there is a fantastic scene with her overpowering a artificial intelligence, which is supposed to be omnipotent and not feeling and very objective and biased and not have any of these weaknesses that human emotions will cause you to have. But we see that Carol can even overcome that. And that whole scene where she's able to get that restraint off her neck and just bring her powers to fruition is fantastic. And I think that will definitely make a lot of people cheer in the audiences. It definitely made my audience cheer. And I think it's going to mean a lot to a lot of women out there as well. I think what's really cool is getting back up is one of the most important things of this movie. That, we can't ever guarantee that you're not going to get knocked down. You will get knocked down in your life. That's just a given. But it's very important to get back up. And I think that's really cool, especially, at least in the comics, like Captain America, he learns that from his mom because she always got back up from her abusive relationships. And as a kid that came from a single parent household as well, I love you, Mom. I definitely have always been surrounded by just strong, tough women in my life, and that have been through a lot, but they've definitely sacrificed a lot for me and my brother. And so I appreciate that they're getting their due right now. So I really like that a lot. And also, like, I have a new niece who's about 2 months old, and so I think I'm going to get her a Captain Marvel onesie.
Yeah.
Nice. Good stuff. Blue, what you got?
Yes. So I thought this was very empowering. I honestly, hot take right here. I thought Black Panther did women empowerment a little bit better than this. I thought I love.
I see where you're coming from, though.
The three female leads in Black Panther were freaking amazing.
Awesome.
But I will say this: so representation matters. And so even without the content of this film and the quality of this film, I think it's not impossible to put yourself in someone like for me, like Black Widow's shoes. Like when she does all those spin throws, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like that. I wish I could do that. That's awesome. That being said, it gets unbelievably easier if you look like the person that you're looking at. So, as a white guy, I can kind of picture myself a little easier as Captain America. And so to finally see, I've got the biceps. I can curl a helicopter. But seriously, to have a movie with a female lead, for all those folks out there that you'd need something to look up to. If a comic book movie can do that, that's freaking awesome, and that should be applauded.
And with that, we're going to move into our conclusion. So let's talk about, our lasting thoughts for the movie. What we recommended, if we would recommend this movie for everybody who's clearly hanging out still with us, listening to this. If you were to recommend this movie, what other films may you suggest for people to watch beforehand? Brylan, what you got?
So I think this is definitely one of the better Marvel origin films, and I think it's definitely worth watching. Brie Larson's awesome as Captain Marvel. Carol Danvers is a fun character. Can't wait to see what she does next. I just wish they didn't do that bullshit with Nick Fury. And that's my only big gripe about it. It's just a little heavy-handed with the 90s stuff. But other than that, great film. And I'm also excited because we only have to wait another month for another Captain Marvel film. Haha, zing zing. And then, yes, I am totally ready for Endgame. They better introduce a lawyer named Jennifer Walters in Endgame, and that would make me so excited for the next section of MCU that we get. So, bring more of these strong lady characters that are in the Marvel Universe into the MCU, because we've shown that it's fun and exciting and awesome. And yes, disgusting cat puking noises are eternal.
Maddox, what about you? Lasting thoughts?
Oh, and thanks for the shout out to Memphis, Nick Fury. I appreciated that at least.
I mean, obviously, I love this movie and can't recommend it enough. In general, I've loved all the Marvel movies. So, I mean, if you haven't watched them, you should watch all of them, except maybe Thor 1 and 2. Just read like the Wikipedia on them to like get the general idea, and you're fine. In terms of other things I'd recommend, not movie related, but if you want more kind of fun Captain Marvel, the Spider-Woman trade from 2016, I think. It's the one where she gives birth to her kid. Captain Marvel is a major character in it. And it's a really, like, the run is hilarious. And it's like a really fun friendship between two women. And honestly, it's probably one of my like favorite story arcs over the last decade in comics. So not movie related, but if you have more interest in comics and Captain Marvel, Spider-Woman trade from a couple of years ago is really good. It's the one where she's pregnant on the cover. So pretty easy to identify.
Nice. I definitely recommend this movie by far. Everything anybody actually said already. I think the only thing I would tell, if you haven't seen any of the Marvel films, I mean, definitely go watch them. You can do that. There's a lot of YouTube videos that people also sum up to, so that may be a little bit easier for you. But if you can do the marathon, feel free. I've done too many marathons of them.
Get your diapers ready, Warren.
Yeah, for sure, bro. It all depends. Here we go. And so if it's something that you have time for, definitely go check it out. I mean, they sell some of these tickets that are like $60-$70 that just shows all the movies. So it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of movies. But definitely go watch this film. I mean, just about everything that we've kind of talked about today, like this film is like absolutely like amazing. So I don't necessarily know where it kind of ranks right now because I haven't just looked at the entire rankings of everything, but this is definitely in the upper top 5 by far. But by far my favorite origin film by a far margin. Yeah, for sure. Meaghan, what you got?
I also would recommend it to anyone and everyone. I don't think that you need to watch any other Marvel movie before watching it if you don't feel like you want to or have the time. If you don't care about Marvel movies or the Marvel universe, you should still watch this movie because it's fantastic. I don't have a ranking for Marvel movies, but I did love Black Panther, Ragnarok, saw Ant-Man for the first time recently. Love that. I think all of them have a little bit of that kind of sense of humor that I really enjoy in some of these Marvel movies. So if I had to recommend any of them, I would recommend those. But I definitely don't think it's something that you need to know the entire universe before watching it. And it's certainly worth seeing no matter what.
For sure. Blew it. Send us off.
Yeah, I thought it was a solid intro movie. Pretty much on par with I mean, I think Iron Man is the gold standard of all of them. And then like Doctor Strange, Ant-Man, Captain Marvel kind of all fall in that like secondary slot. Excited to see where she goes though. There was a lot of really cool stuff that they introduced that I can't wait to see be developed.
Sure. And with that, We are the Down in Front podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for joining. Thank you so much, Meaghan, and thank you so much, Maddox, for kind of hanging out with us tonight. Brylan blew it. You guys are always here. Maddox, where can people find more of your work on the interwebs, and what do you do online, if anything?
So these days, I am mostly active on Instagram. My handle is shutter.siren. And I mostly post burlesque photos from different scenes in Boston.
Nice. Definitely go check that out. Rylan, where can people find more of your work on the interwebs?
You can find me wearing slap bracelets and playing with pogs on Twitter at Brylan, BRILUND. I am from the 90s. Don't forget that. And you can also find me posting many movie and TV reviews on Instagram at I am Brylan. I recently put up my very correct and accurate list of the MCU movies in order. So definitely check that out. I'd love to hear your thoughts, not just saying you're wrong and then just leaving. Give us some context, have a conversation. It might help.
Damn it. I was waiting all night for you to call me out on that. I didn't say anything.
I was waiting for this moment.
Shit, he got me. Meaghan, where can people find more of your work on the interwebs?
You can find me drinking wine all day, every day at Friends with Blends, Friends W Blends, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever. I think we have a website too. I don't know. I post pictures and drink wine. It's cool.
Sounds like a good life. See nothing wrong with that. I am excited though that they didn't play that song in this movie. I get knocked down, but I get up again. I was really nervous that they was going to play that, and I'm glad they didn't. So
they played "I'm Just a Girl,"
which I think was great. Some people don't.
I guess they're saving spider webs for Far From Home.
All right. The Shredder, where can people find more of your work, and what shows you got coming out?
So we're not playing on 420. There's a story to that. I'm not going to go into it, but you can find us at Mayonnaise Music or Mayonnaise Band on most major platforms. Re-releasing an old EP sometime soon, and have a new EP coming out also soon. This is creepy, but you can check us out. We have a new YouTube channel called Jesse Rand Explains the 90s to Children. I swear to God, it's more wholesome than it sounds. This isn't
why to children?
Because they're not from the 90s. They don't know it. So
why couldn't you just chop it off with Jesse Rand Explains the 90s? The children part is
because no, it's wholesome. He's Jesse Rand's talking about how stuff they might have missed.
You never been to reading days at your local library or something as a child?
Oh, when all the book fair? Yep. That was the best day ever.
The Scholastic Book Fair?
Yep. Oh, yeah. I love this class.
Yeah, see, people...
saved all my money for that week.
Children don't know about this, and Jesse Rand needs to educate them.
That's not old. I thought Jesse was a baby.
Nah, he's turning 40.
Yeah,
he's 46.
He's only 82?
Let's see, 83? I'm 97, so he's probably...
Are you describing the year he was born or the age?
No, the age.
Yeah.
The age. Obviously.
Younger side of the 82. Easy. We are the Down in Front podcast. Check out more of our work at downinfrontpodcast.com, where you can find our small bios. You can have our video teasers. We have our last cause there. We have a lot of amazing artwork by the one and only marvelous Mocha himself, who couldn't be on. So definitely go check out our work for there. We're going to be on just about almost every sort of social media platform. So we're on Spotify if you want to listen to us for streaming. We're going to be on Reddit. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. I mean, literally everywhere. Just type in Down in Front Podcast. On Twitter, we're at _JFP. At Facebook, we're at facebook.com/downinfrontpodcast. If you want to hang out with Reddit, we're going to be on there for downinfront.reddit.com. If you like what we do, you want to kind of sign up to be a patron, consider becoming a patron. Patreon.com/downinfrontpodcast. We're kind of revamping this system to give you bonus episodes and kind of more content and other kind of smaller sort of reviews too of things that we don't really get a chance to kind of talk about. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Senior Brylan, what's our next review?
Our next review is Captive State.
What?
I don't even know what that is.
It's a movie.
I feel like that's going to be an
Are you
easy
sure?
Jesse Rand type solution.
Yeah.
I love going into blind for these movies, but I really need to start looking at some of these things I vote for. I don't know what that is. Okay.
I'm a bestie. It's okay.
Perfect. Well, I think I voted for this, so
Yeah, you did.
I think I should know what this is. All right,
What
whatever.
were the other options?
We'll find out. Thanks,
It
everybody.
doesn't matter what the other options are. Oh, sorry, that was last week.
Boys. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.
I can take a look